Hey there, Al Iverson here. It's time for another one of your email authentication and deliverability questions answered. This time around, the question I'm going to answer is this: what do I do about ESP alignment failures? Now, this question came from an interesting place. The other day, just a couple days ago, I did a webinar with Ed Fisher from Microsoft, talked a whole bunch about all the little fiddly bits of DMARC, how it all works, the technology behind it, how it could all go wrong, and what to do about that. And we got a lot of good questions during that webinar, and this was one of those. This is a question that somebody asked during the webinar. Alignment is a common enough point of confusion that I wanted to touch on it more. I thought it would be a good topic for a video this week, and so here we go. The question is this: I have properly authorized our ESP to send on behalf of our domain. However, I find that SPF is still failing DMARC's alignment test. My ESP is unfamiliar with setting up a custom return path. Do I have other options? So to better understand what to do about alignment issues and when alignment or when lack of alignment does not mean failure, let's start with an overview, a quick understanding of what alignment actually means. And so in a nutshell, alignment refers to the domain in an email authentication header matching the visible from domain, whether that be the SPF sender policy framework or DKIM domain keys identified mail. Whether that be either of those two headers, the domain in there showing as the responsible party for the message, matching that visible from domain, and of course passing email authentication checks. That's sort of the core of DMARC. DMARC requires that SPF or DKIM align and that match the visible from domain. There's also concept here of relaxed or strict alignment. Strict alignment means exactly matching. Spamresource.com equals spamresource.com. You could have one in the SPF, one in the visible from, but they are the exact same thing. That's strict alignment. Relaxed alignment could be a subdomain. It just means that both of entries have to roll up to the same organizational domain. So the SPF domain could be email.spamresource.com. And the visible from domain could be spamresource.com. They're both part of the same organizational domain, that is spamresource.com. So that would pass relaxed alignment checks. Now for SPF, right, this comes from the return path header, aka the envelope sender, or sometimes they call it the bounce domain. That SPF alignment is when the domain in this header matches the visible from domain. DKIM has a hidden header for a DKIM signature. It puts the sort of the checksum of that cryptographic signature there so that the receiving mail server can check and ensure that the message was not tampered with after creation. And that also has a domain setting associated with it that says this is the responsible party for that email message. So DKIM alignment is where that DKIM header responsible party, responsible entity domain matches the visible from domain. And DMARC alignment is when either or both of SPF or DKIM align with the visible from address. In a perfect world, it's great to have both, but one or the other is supposed to be good enough and often is, in most cases, to pass DMARC checks. By the spec, it should pass DMARC checks. Sometimes you see a mailbox provider, inbox provider, or secure email gateway who might be a little suspicious when a message only has SPF and not a DKIM header too. That's not really how I would do it, but some of them do apply their own rules. They can do what they want. But at the end of the day, to pass DMARC checks, you only have to have one or the other align. So let's visualize alignment. I think this is a great way to help understand how alignment actually works in practice, right? This is fully aligned. Like if you're using an enterprise marketing cloud automation platform to send email marketing messages, newsletters, transactional messages, what have you. These typically fully align. Same if you're using a B2B one-to-one email platform like Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. You configure that primary domain in there and you're good. This is going to fully match up here, right? They've got the return path or SMTP envelope is example.com. The DKIM domain is example.com. The visible from header is also example.com. All three of those align. That's perfect alignment. Again, like I said, it's a bit belt and suspenders because if one of them fails, the other one should pass, will still pass, and that should be enough to pass DMARC checks. Now, in the case of phishing or spoofing, bad guys often will not be able to authenticate with the legitimate domain. And so they'll have a different domain in the return path. They might also have a DKIM signature with a different domain in it. And this is what bad guys have been doing for a long time to try to sneak their way into the inbox. An example here is they might send with their own domain in the return path, and that could have an SPF record. It could pass SPF authentication. So you've got an email message that passed authentication checks, but it doesn't align with the visible from domain. It means they're not authenticating with the domain that shows up in the from address. And so the from address is not being shown to be the responsible entity for the message. And that's a sign that a message is potentially not legitimate. And that's what DMARC was created to try to help reject, to try to help block. Like if it says it's from us, but it doesn't authenticate in an aligned fashion that matches our from address, those authentication identifiers not matching the from address, then it doesn't pass DMARC. So again, bad guys have been doing this for years successfully. They probably still do this today, hopefully a little less successfully with DMARC. If you have DMARC configured for your domain, you're not going to let a message like this through to your inbox, to anybody's inbox if they're trying to use your domain. But if this could be a problem too if you are using an ESP platform, email marketing or newsletter platform, and you don't configure that correctly. In this instance, the return path is likely going to be the ESP platform. A lot of them use VERP, variable envelope return path. It's a method of handling, tracking bounces, rejections. Goes back forever. It's been around since probably the 1990s with listserv. Anyway, the point of it is that the sending platform sets their own return path header. You don't have any control over it. A lot of these platforms also will set a default DKIM signature too. Again, this is going to be something for the platform, something with the platform's domain. So messages you send from the platform could have, likely do have a DKIM signature specific to the platform you're sending from. So if you don't do any other configuration, that only leaves the visible from address for your domain. So you set it up as you and you send as you, but it's going to fail DMARC checks because there's no authentication. There's no alignment in the authentication. That's a problem, right? And that's the source of concern for a lot of people, where when they set up an email platform and they send and say, hey, wait a minute, it says I've got DKIM in place. It says I'm passing a DKIM and SPF, but it's failing DMARC checks. Well, why? Well, it's because it's not aligned. That's sort of the core of configuring one of these send platforms right. Is when you set yourself up to send emails from a newsletter platform, you need to configure your custom domain so that you're signing DKIM with your specific chosen domain when you send messages from that platform. A lot of the platforms will have help pages that say, hey, how to configure this platform to fully authenticate when sending from your custom domain. Some of them might not even explicitly mention authentication if they're worried about the concepts being too technical. They'll just say how to fully configure your custom domain. They're usually talking about DKIM. And that's how you pass and make sure you're going to pass DMARC when you're sending from that platform, is you configure DKIM for your custom domain. Now, this goes back to the question at the start of the video. Help, my return path header, my SPF header is not aligned. So I'm seeing a lack of SPF alignment. So the SPF alignment check is failing. Is that a problem? No, it is not. This is okay. This is a good way to configure things. It's totally fine to be set up this way. And what it's telling you is that you've got a DKIM signature that aligns with the visible from address, and so the visible from address is the responsible entity for that message. That's what you want. That's enough to pass DMARC. The fact that the SPF header has the ESP platform's domain in there, probably set up to try to track bounces, that's okay. That's fine. This is not a failure condition. This works just good. Tons of email platforms, newsletter services, email marketing services, marketing automation platforms, CRM tools, tons of them let you set up DKIM to sign with your domain and send mail this way, and it passes DMARC checks. This is what you want. Now, again, this is a little different than when you set up Google Workspace, for example. Your first domain, your primary domain, is going to be aligned here. Everything matches. But let's say you want to set up a user alias domain, and that's where things get a little trickier, right? If you set up that user alias domain, the return path Google sets this up so that the return path is still going to be your primary domain. As long as you configure DKIM for your alias domain, the additional domain there, you're still fine. The from address and the DKIM signature align. So you've got DKIM alignment, and that's enough to pass DMARC checks. So you've got DMARC alignment here, you've got DKIM alignment here. Again, just like with that ESP example, just because the return path is a different domain is not enough to sync you. This is still fine. This is still going to pass. That's the way Google Workspace works. And so there was a mini master class on authentication. I hope that was interesting to you. I hope you were able to stay awake through the whole thing. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any future cool questions, any other stuff that I could geek out on like we did today with alignment, drop me an email at al.iverson@valmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to visit our website at valmail.com when you're ready to embark upon your DMARC journey. We are here and willing and able to help you. Thanks. Have a great day.